WLW, welcome to the show. So, Mike DeWine issued his Delta 8 intoxicating hemp emergency ban that kicked in last week, but that's emblematic of a bigger problem. And the problem is it's a slow to move government, right, that drives the black market. The reason why he had to do that ban was because the legislature's been dragging their feet for a long time. They had a carve out for hemp, and then somebody figured out a way to go, hey, we could take some of the low level THC in hemp and process it. And as long as we derive the THC, which is the psychoactive ingredient in weed, the stuff that gets you high, we can make these products. And then, for example, 50 West rolls out a beverage. Many companies are doing it. That's CBD infused, cannabis infused, and you get a decent buzz, kind of like alcohol, without the alcohol side effects. Many people like it. Well, kids were getting a hold of this in the smokable and edible form in some rogue carryout stores around the state, which, of course, happens when you have a black market that's created by government overregulation and a government slow to move. And the end result is now adults can't have nice things either. No one wants kids getting high. At the same time, as an adult, I've kind of earned that right. So this fits into something else that's going on under the Trump FDA. They're fast-tracking reviews of tobacco companies are in the nicotine pouch game now because fewer people are smoking tobacco, as you know. So they're going to go, hey, we got to make our money. We'll do nicotine pouches, things like Zyn and other stuff like that. That's all well and good. But the problem is it's much like Ohio's doing with the CBD stuff, is that the slow-moving government, the plotting government, the legislature, simply can't get out of the way and create rules that make access available to other companies. And then the end result is you have some black market folks getting their products into, convenience stores, for example, just like we do in Ohio when it comes to CBD. Kind of a long setup there. I apologize. She's Sophia Hamilton. She writes in Reason magazine about this. Also, she's a fellow with Young Voices. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me this morning, Scott. I'm excited to chat a little bit about the scary market changes that we're seeing with not only nicotine pouches, but as you were saying, with cannabis as well. It's
two sides of the same coin, right? I mean, that was the world's longest setup. I apologize, but it all comes together because it's the problem is the slow-moving, plotting government. And we live in an on-demand society. People sample something, they see something, they read something, they eat, they drink, I like this a lot. Where can I get it? Well, all of a sudden you have an exploding consumer market for that. And we get it whether it's a CBD-infused THC, CBD-infused drink, or whether it's a nicotine pouch. Somebody's going to rush in, legal or illegal, to fill that void. What's happening relative to nicotine? We know what's going on with THC here in Ohio, but what about the nicotine patch game?
Yeah, so nicotine policy is changing all across the country. We have some states that are incredibly strict and have a lot of bans where they limit ages, percentages of nicotine, flavors, and then you have a different regulatory regime at the federal level where they are very slow to approve quality products that have been on the international market for decades and that we know are safe. And so consumers are trying new products like nicotine pouches. They've been on the U.S. market for at least a decade, but they haven't had full FDA approval. And it's a whole process to get the official stamp of approval from the FDA. So American consumers have been able to try these products and realize, I really like the nicotine pouches. They're a lot smoother than vapes. There's less downsides. All of these great things. But the FDA hasn't moved as fast as consumers have. They've moved at a snail's pace, and so consumers have tried this product, decided that they liked it, and it's hard to get what they want because of all of the state restrictions on flavors. Sure. So who's come and filled that demand where the states block access? The illicit market. And so we're seeing a bunch of counterfeits explode onto the scene where they look exactly like the old products that people know, but there's new flavors, and that's exactly what consumers want. But they don't know that they're getting a sketchy product. Right, because they haven't the process. Well, there's a fine line to balance there, and I get whether it's what Mike DeWine's doing here in Ohio, it's the exact same argument we're doing with the THC and the intoxicating hemp, as we call it, and what's going on with nicotine edibles and the pouches. And that is
government will tell you, oh, well, hold on. We need to research. We got to make sure this stuff is safe to be consumed by people. You don't know that if you go to your convenience store. You don't know if a product has been tested or not, and that's part of the problem, right?
Exactly. But I think most consumers go into a store and they see something on the shelf and they go, "Oh yeah, this is perfectly safe. It's getting sold to me." And there might be some risk. Like they know when they buy cigarettes or when they buy a vape, when they buy any sort of product, that there's a downside, but they aren't going in there thinking that it could be a counterfeit. And I think that's where it's really scary and dangerous, is that they think that they're buying a real product. And with the nicotine pouches, it's a harm reduction tool. They think that they're buying something that's safer for them, and really it's a counterfeit, and it's not meeting the needs. And
right.
the reason why we have all of these restrictions on the nicotine pouches is what they always say is for the safety of children. So children aren't getting these products, but we've all been teenagers. We know how teens are. They're going to get their hands on what they want to. Mm-hmm. And now the market is even more dangerous because the market is filled with counterfeits, because we restricted it for the safety of these teens, but now the teens are getting what? They're getting the counterfeit product.
Right. So what would happen, basically, politically speaking, is a lot of progressives, for example, and some conservatives will talk about, well, this is why we need a strong FDA, and this is, you're just going to fast track all this stuff and put all these more poisons on the market, and they're getting on the market anyway. To ignore what the black market has created, whether it's THC drinks or edibles, or in this case, nicotine pouches and pretty much everything else, they've got to meet consumer demand head on. And you don't do that by, in 5 years, we're going to have research and we'll find out whether or not we'll allow this stuff. And that's going to get polluted down by lobby groups and everything else, or just simply, if you're anti edible or vape or nicotine, you're going to shoot this thing down, whatever the corporate policy is, so to speak, the party policy. So this stuff has to be faster. We got to do a better job of saying, okay, well, it's not the best thing you can put in your body, but at least there's not mercury or serious harmful chemicals in it. We need to test this stuff and screen it much, much faster. But that's the reality here. Can we actually change that, though?
We definitely can. These products have been available in the Europe market for decades. We know that they're safe. We don't need to go into a whole new approval process. We can look at these markets that we know and trust and say, okay, here's the research that they've produced. It's good to be on the U.S. market. Mm-hmm. Let's fast track it and approve it. Instead, they're doing the same thing where they did with vapes, where they blocked good things from getting on the market that we knew were safe and that we knew consumers wanted. And instead of approving things, they went and attacked the counterfeits, which needs to happen. You need to get the counterfeits off the market.
Right.
But they're ignoring why those counterfeits are on the market, and that's to fill the desires of the consumers. And so we're seeing the same issue with nicotine pouches, where they're attacking the counterfeits, but they're not addressing why the counterfeits popped up first. And so they really do need to address the approval process to get good quality products on the market that adult consumers want. And that includes flavors, that includes choice in nicotine percentages. And you can't just put this desire to have prohibition, especially among teenagers, to harming adult consumers, because everyone will be worse off if you take away that choice.
Well, that was Governor Mike DeWine's cry here. This is about the children. We got to save the children, because children are getting... Okay, well, what about the retailer end of this, Sophia Hamilton? If I'm a retailer, what's the retailer's perspective on this? There's someone who's like, I don't care what's in it, even if it's poison, I'll sell it to them because I need to make money at my carryout. It's certainly not all retailers. I don't see the big box stores or, the Krogers of the world, for example, shelving this stuff. But, at the same time, the little guy at the corner, what's the process for them? They're trying to keep their head above water too. I get it, but I don't think I'd want to make my money, selling to kids. Some people are going to do that. It seems like it's an enforcement issue.
Yeah, there are enforcement issues, but they're smart. They're going to find someone who's above the legal age to buy the product for them, or have a fake ID. There's definitely ways it's really not that complicated for them to find ways to get these products in a reliable manner. And I think it's fair to not want teenagers to be using these products, especially if they've never used other nicotine products. You don't want to get them addicted, but they're going to do what they want to do. At the end of the day, they're going to drink, even though the drinking age is at 21. The age to consume nicotine and tobacco is also at 21. And we were all in college at one point, but I just, this desire to go through, prohibition policies, when we've seen them fail time and time again with so many different substances, is the silliest thing in my mind. We've seen it fail. Why are we trying to do it again? Because it's hurting retailers, like you said, it's hurting consumers, it's hurting the companies, and it's hurting the local economies, because you get so much money from taxes on these products.
Right.
And so you're trying to prohibit it, and you're putting it into the black market where the state is no longer able to get the excise taxes from these products. So it's really just a lose-lose-lose situation all around.
No question. And, the fact of the matter is the government can never keep up with demand. They need to move a lot faster, be a lot leaner. That makes capitalism work better. Certainly, we don't want poisons going to convenience stores or our bodies. We assume that a lot of the stuff is tested. But the way the model's set up, the big tobacco companies that have all sorts of research and development and backing and money coming, we're talking billions in publicly traded companies, they can afford to play the regulation game, like Zyn, for example, simply because they have the. What about the mom and pop, the entrepreneurs? And the same is true when it comes to THC infused drinks. Anheuser-Busch may be able to put a product out that rivals that, but something like 50 West here in Cincinnati, when they roll out a THC infused product, they don't have the backing, the wherewithal, the R&D to be able to afford all the regulatory red tape to get the government seal of approval. That just stymies small and mid-sized businesses, doesn't it?
Exactly. Going through the approval process takes, years and countless dollars. Zyn just became the first company to be approved to market to adult consumers in the U.S. their nicotine pouches in January of this year. The first company. They're a giant company, international, and that took them years and years to get that first stamp of approval. That's not even the end process. Most companies cannot wait that long. And so it's an incredibly difficult process to go through. It's also very, very confusing and long. And the FDA has a huge backlog, a decades-long backlog.
Wow.
And most companies just cannot survive that wait to get the approval. And that's where you're seeing good competition get pushed out of the way while we have the door wide open for counterfeits, where we don't know what's even in them, because there's no approval process. There's no regulation there.
And no one's saying nicotine is, you certainly, you can get sick. You can overdose on nicotine for that matter too. But, it seems to me a better alternative than traditional tobacco would be vape products, but especially nicotine pouches that you put between your lip and gum. It's not a carcinogen in the way that the traditional snuffs and dip and smoking is. And so, if you're worried about the future generations and lung cancer and cancers, well, this seems like to be a good alternative. It's not perfect. I'm not saying it doesn't have harmful effects, but it's certainly a lot less than what the alternative is or the traditional methods are.
Exactly. It's a harm reduction tool because it is more safe than the other products that are out there. So if you're going to be consuming nicotine, this is the safest way that you can do it. And there's still downsides. You can have some irritation, stomach upset. But I'm sitting here drinking a coffee, and there's similar downsides to coffee as well with nicotine. So this is really the safest way that you can consume the product. And it's funny to see all of the restrictions when you can easily go and buy a pack of cigarettes still. And so all of these barriers that we're putting up to a less harmful product and placing more taxes on it just does not make sense if the end goal is to have people consuming in a safer way. Right. It really does seem like the end goal is prohibition and abstinence from any substance.
Well, I think the other leg of the stool here between companies and the government are the fact of the big business that is the health prevention people, or the health people, right? The lung association, heart association, whatever association it might be, is when the vaping trend started to take root years and years ago. What surprised me is some of the same people that said, "Oh my God, we've got to sue tobacco companies out of existence, and they're killing people." And they are. Vaping seemed a good way to wean yourself off of traditional tobacco, and yet they fought just as hard as they did against traditional tobacco as they did against vape. And some of them are fighting against nicotine pouches. And I'm like, that's a much safer alternative to what you get. So if if you stamp out the problem, not that I don't know what the smoking levels, but they're nowhere near where they used to be. Now your organization ceased to exist, so we have to find the next boogeyman in order to keep our funding.
Exactly. And what they will never say is that they'll never point to the tobacco studies that are done at the national level that show our youth and adult smoking rates are at a historic low.
Yep.
They will never point that out. And why is that? Because of new products like nicotine pouches. And they just want to demonize this because they think it's from the same old big tobacco of decades before. And no, these are companies that want to have safer alternatives for their client base, because they know what their consumers want. And I'll go, when I testify on these issues to state legislators, the people that are arguing against access to these good products are not based in reality. They really are, I think, just trying to keep their jobs arguing against big tobacco in their minds.
Right.
And they will argue that nicotine is as harmful and as addictive as substances like heroin. And I hear that line so many times, and it's the funniest thing to me, but it's sad because they think it's rooted in reality in any bit.
I always laugh at we got to do it to save the children, because children are being corrupted, and to agree, children should not be buying intoxicating hemp products at your carryout, but that is not a reason to shut the entire industry down because so many adults enjoy it. Whether it's THC drinks or nicotine pouches or vaping, it's the same predictable argument from the pearl clutchers about protecting the children. We got to shut that down, protects the children. Damn it, what the adult market wants, we've got to do this to save the children, which they're doing at the behest of, the big health organizations, as we mentioned, as well as the big tobacco companies that are getting decreasing revenue from tobacco here in the States. And so they supplant that income and keep their shareholders happy with something else, whether it's nicotine pouches or vape. That shouldn't price out the little guy, though, and that's what's happening here, whether it's 50 West or somebody who's selling vape juice to a local supplier. Anyway, Sofia Hamilton writing about this in Reason. She's with the Young Voices, and thanks again, Sofia. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on, Scott. I appreciate it.
Be well. Good stuff there, and that's the libertarian side of me coming out. I'm not saying open it all up and it's a free. There has to be reasonable amounts of testing to make sure the product's safe as it can be, but it shouldn't take decades, and it shouldn't be only available to the big pocketed companies who can afford that.